And Tom, just to remind people that it's all to do with this, the Telegraph front page, what they call the lockdown files. And with what Rishi Sunak was indicating, piecemeal information, the issue could be, of course, that the Telegraph will carry on with this and more information will come into the public domain.
Oh, I think that's undoubtable. There are over 100,000 messages that have been given over to the Telegraph, of course, by Isabel Oakeshott, the journalist with whom Matt Hancock wrote his pandemic memoirs. It has to be said that these two individuals had very different views on pandemic policy. Isabel Oakeshott, one of the leading lockdown skeptic journalists in the country, and of course Matt Hancock, the man who was behind those lockdowns. So perhaps people are saying it was not the wisest idea of Matt Hancock to hand over his entire phone records to this particular journalist, and yet that is what happens, and it includes really a vast quantity of data, over 2 million words, 100,000 texts. We've seen on the front page of the Daily Telegraph one story about care homes and tests today, but given the sheer quantity of information that they have, it would be very surprising if the Telegraph did not run with these stories for some time to come. No doubt there is more information held within those messages.
But as Sakir indicated in his question at the end of PMQs, the issue, of course, I think the figure that's been talked about, some 17,678 residents in these care homes dying between the time when Sir Chris Whitty actually said they should be testing and when that testing actually then started in August. So clearly a lot of families will want answers to this. And the issue, of course, as Sir Keir Starmer said, you know, we don't know when this inquiry is actually going to come up with any answers and the lessons to be learned.
No, we don't, and this is a real big question mark over the entire affair. Obviously, the inquiry is the body that has access to all the different forms of communication, evidence, oral and written, and of course what we're seeing in the Telegraph is just one sort of slither of all of that, just the WhatsApp messages. But of course there were emails, there were meetings. Helen Whately in the Commons just now has referred to one email that came from the same time as those WhatsApp messages that seems to contradict the story on the front page of the Telegraph. It's an email that referenced the health department's want to test everyone going into care homes. However, the lack of tests available at that time meant that they prioritised those exiting hospital rather than those coming from the general community. This is the argument that Matt Hancock has been making all morning, that he would have liked to test everyone, but given limited resources, he prioritised tests from those leaving hospital. I suppose we will not know the real answers here until we see all of the data. How many tests actually were there available at that time? And was it the advice of Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance that tests could be more widely available? Or, as Matt Hancock has been alluding to, was there this meeting that actually revised that to say we simply don't have enough tests to do that comprehensive model? These are the questions that are going to run and run until, frankly, we see the full and frank inquiry.
Yeah, and still not heard directly, of course, from Matt Hancock either. But interesting that Sir Keir Starmer went on the attack over the cost of living crisis, a familiar political weapon for him. No mention of what's been going on with the Windsor framework, as it's called now. But obviously, Rishi Sunak has been speaking to his backbenchers, the 1922 committee. It looks as if most are on side. But now we've got some more noises off from the DUP, particularly from Sammy Wilson, on this key issue about the Stormont break. It seems that he is not actually persuaded.
Yes, it's interesting looking at the voices within the DUP. They don't always speak with one voice. Sammy Wilson has always been on the most Eurosceptic wing of the DUP. He has voiced some concerns about this agreement from the day that it was published. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, a colleague of his, the leader of the DUP, has made some more warm noises. So we are seeing that diversity of views within the DUP. They are, of course, waiting for their official legal advice to come in. That is currently, they have lawyers poring over the text of the agreement, and particularly what the EU has published as well as what the UK has published, of course. But yes, it's interesting. The Conservative benches seem fairly placated. They had that meeting with the Prime Minister last night. We haven't heard any big voices of dissent from the Tory benches, but of course from the benches opposite it was Stephen Flynn, the leader of the Scottish Nationalists in the House of Commons, who was the first to mention that protocol, talking about how if Northern Ireland gets this privileged access to the single market, why can't Scotland as well? Well, of course, this is what the Prime Minister will be facing, and he was seen to have made some maybe less than erudite comments yesterday that have been interpreted one way by Remainers in terms of the access to the single market that didn't roll so easily off the tongue about the access to the UK market as well, just as important there. But yes, the cost of living was the primary argument being led by Sir Keir Starmer, and perhaps that's because the Labour Party has decided that all of these questions about Northern Ireland, about the protocol, about the Windsor framework, these are all so technical that the people in these swing constituencies in the United Kingdom might not be so interested.